Welcome to MedCrime. Today we shall be looking at the difference between original and generic drugs. When you feel unwell, you seek medical attention from your doctor or physician, and often you receive a prescription. With this prescription, you'll either get the generic drug or an original or brand drug to manage your condition. However, you may not be aware of the difference between these two, and in this video we shall be looking at these differences and which one is better. An original drug or a brand drug is a pharmaceutical product that is developed and marketed under patent or a registered trademark by a pharmaceutical company manufacturing it. This drug is also known as an innovator drug. The medical regulators will give a patent or exclusive protection to this brand so that to allow them to recover the cost from their innovation and the research for several years and also to make profit from the same drug. This may take up to 20 years, and usually this prevents other companies from producing and selling the same drug. Once the patent or this protection is expired, generics can enter the market through a shortened regulatory approval process after meeting the same quality, safety, and effectiveness standards as the original drug. And on the other hand, generic drug is an off-patent pharmaceutical product which has the same strength, same dosage form, same route of administration, performance, quality, and same intended use as it is with the branded drug or the original drug. This in pharmacology we call it pharmaceutical equivalence. And this drug must have the same effect in the body, same safety features, quality as the same brand, and this is known as bioequivalence. A generic drug can be interchangeable with a brand, but it usually costs less. And normally, some of the generic medicines may look different to their branded equivalent because they have different inactive ingredients like the coloring, the starches, sugars, and flavorings in this drug, but the active ingredient is exactly the same as a brand drug. How do generic drugs differ from the original drugs? Like we have seen, generic medication are a chemical copy of the original brand, with the same active ingredient, but their inactive ingredients or excipients may vary between the original and generic drug. One or the other may have a slightly more or fewer types of excipients, for example fillers, binders, flavors, depending on their manufacturing process. And data usually indicates that the use of low-cost generic improves health outcomes, for instance, and the reason is that people taking generics are likely to adhere and comply taking these medications without defaulting because these generics are fairly affordable compared to the original drugs. And how do generic drugs really differ from the original drugs? For branding purposes, generic drugs are not exactly the same in look, color, taste, and shape as the brand name drugs. And this must have its unique brand name. And these areas of difference are noticeable between the brand name drugs and generic. It means you'll get different drug names with the same active ingredients, and this active ingredient is what we refer to a generic drug. You'll also notice there is a different inactive ingredients. In a brand name and generic drug relationship, the difference usually is the inactive ingredient contained in these medications. A generic drug will be cheaper than the brand name drugs. And lastly, you realize generic drugs have different manufacturers because you receive your type of drug depending on which manufacturer your drugstore uses. And lastly, are patients aware of the difference between the two? In most circumstances, the only difference that will be there is the cost. Owing to the harsh economic times that has resulted in high cost of living and inflation of basic commodities, most of the time patients are looking for options of getting their prescription filled with affordable yet quality medicines. That's why they may opt to go for generic drugs. Why are generic drugs cheaper? Like we have said, the cost of branded drugs is majorly determined by the number of years they spend in innovator companies in carrying out extensive research and development of the drugs, and the brands have a trademark protection. A lesser time and money is required in developing generic drugs, since the innovator company has already discovered the active ingredient and disclosed the excipients of that drug to these other companies. After the expiration of the brand drug patent, the market competition between multiple generic companies that try to produce this drug, resulting in a low price. If you are concerned that generic drugs are cheaper and may affect the quality, but this is not the case. Imagine the world without enough and affordable essential drugs. It is why generic drugs are allowed to make more drugs available and affordable so that people can easily afford to purchase them. Generic drugs are cheaper because the cost of production does not include the cost of development and marketing for the brand name drugs. New drugs expense will include the cost of the research, patency, development, marketing and promotion, but none of these costs are involved in generic drugs. And what could determine if I should buy generic drugs or a brand drugs? Some medications are only available as a brand. But if a medication has a generic version, you, together with your pharmacist and doctor, can discuss if a brand or generic drug is the best option for you based on your clinical condition and affordability. Regulators also ensure that all medicines, both branded and generics, imported locally or manufactured, are safe, effective, and of the highest quality standard before reaching the patients. And finally, always you need to purchase your medicines from a registered pharmacy or chemist, as you are more likely to get authentic medication. A generic drug does not mean it's a fake drug. Are generic drugs safe? In terms of safety, both generic and brand name medicines must meet the same standards of manufacturing practices. It is important to know that there are people who might be allergic to the inactive ingredients, for example, the colors and preservatives that are used in the brand names or generic names. In this case, we advise that you read the consumer medication information leaflet before consuming or talk to your doctor or pharmacist. And what do you consider when offered a generic medicine? Normally, a generic medicine will cost you less than the original and will have the same effect as the original drug. You may choose not to switch so that you can avoid confusion, especially if you take several different medicines. And if you have allergies, you may want to check whether or not the generic medicine contains something that you are allergic to. And in this case, we recommend that you check with the pharmacist or your doctor so that he or she can advise you further.